just remove the noise behind a lot of headlines. So I want to look at Stats SA. Now, Stats SA is a treasure trove of information for us who are interested, for your Bongonomics people. Stats SA publishes inflation numbers, they publish population numbers, they publish a host of numbers that are very, very strategic, that are very, very informational, that you can learn a lot from. And a lot of the newspapers will just quote an inflation number when they publish it. And many of us never think and say, but where do they get this number from? Or never think about going back and checking. So today, we're going to do one of those things. We're going to look at some things that SA published recently and just do a deep dive for ourselves. For whatever reason, this thing didn't receive the media attention it deserves, probably because it's controversial. It's about the racial inequality in the country, so it's probably not going to get the type of media attention that it did. Now, they published a lot of information on this. It was a survey, and we're just going to go and look it up ourselves and see what we find. We probably won't be able to cover all of it in this session, but we'll do subsequent sessions to get into it. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go to the Stats SA website and just crack it as our starting point. So I'm just going to open here for us to see the Stats SA webpage and take it from there. Now, you can just go yourself and open on your own Google browser Stats SA, and you will be able to enjoy what we are talking about here. Cool. So here we are. If you are Googling with me on the Stats SA page, what we are looking at is what they call the Income and Expenditure Survey, which they did over 2022 and 2023. Now, I'm going onto the website so you can see that it's actually there for the public to consume, and it's just available. And on Bongonomics, we learn the art of Googling. We learn the art of going to find ourselves and read it. Indeed, it may prove a little complex, but we are in this thing together. We're going to do this thing together. Well, the survey is about income patterns in the country, who earns how much, and how it is distributed across genders and across racial lines. So first thing to establish that this survey tries to look at the income earned by South Africans and just gives a total figure. If you look at the top heading of this website here, it says that South African households spend 3 trillion annually. It sounds like a crazy figure, but we're not going to look at the big figures. We're going to look at what's more relatable to you and me. We're going to look at what is more realistic to you and me. Now, if you go through this maze and this graph, I'm just going to sort of choose things that we're going to look at so it's not too much information to skim through. Very interesting things to look at already. Now, one of the things that will define Bongonomics is that when we read these kind of things, we just want to dive in even deeper. We want to know, why is male households contributing over 60%? Naturally, should say to us that, is this another sign of gender pay gap in the country? You know, that's the first question that comes to mind. So we would highlight this for another study later on to say, what's going on here? Why is it 60% male-headed households, right? Why is female-headed households only 40%, right? So we'd note that to say, is this a gender issue now, right? And we just make a note for ourselves, noted for study later on. Coolio, we move. And they have a nice graph there that shows you, the distribution between male and female. And then they even do it by provinces, etc. You see a beautiful slide there, which we're going to look at. So I've downloaded this presentation because on this webpage, they're just trying to summarize or give a media statement. But what's the deep dive of this whole thing? Now, before we get into the presentation, we are looking into this Income and Expenditure Survey to try and understand the income inequality that we normally read about in the newspapers in this country. How real is that? Is it real, or is it just a story that we are making up for political ends, or whatever the case may be, or it's actually a real thing? Obviously, we are using Stats SA here, not another data provider. We can look into other data providers in next sessions. We can look at the World Bank and whoever has done any income inequality studies in South Africa. But I'm doing this to show you that one of the first approaches that we're going to take is to say, if the newspaper is reporting it, we're going to go look it up ourselves. If the newspaper is reporting it, we're going to try and dig through the noise and see, is this thing real or what? So that, we are able to avoid the extreme views. We just go with the data and we know who's on the extreme end, because data cannot lie. Data is just facts unless you manipulate it. But in this case, we trust that Stats SA is giving us raw facts, truthful facts. Now, as we move, I'm going to go to the slides that they've put together, which are absolutely amazing according to me. Income and expenditure patterns. I like that they call it patterns in the country. I'm just going to jump to slide 6 on their presentation. You can download it on the Stats SA website. I'll put a link for those who are interested. I really encourage you to be a Googler on coming to these kind of things. Yes, read the headline, but get into the story for yourself. Anyway, for those who may say, but how am I going to read what I don't understand? That's why Bongonomics is here. Now, let's get into it. Income and expenditure patterns. This is the presentation. So slide 6 tries to break down in terms of income. How is our income broken down? What percentage of our income comes from what source? So what that means is, if you look at this table here, you have, this is based on 2023. Again, it's an average. So you just based on the survey, I think they surveyed around 30,000 households, I think, spread across different income segments. And, they do their data science things there and then come up with numbers, statistical numbers. Now, what they said is, based on that survey, 68% of income earned by South Africans comes from salaries. Hopefully you can see this slide here, that 68.8, that's like 69%. 69% of income earned by South Africans comes from salaries, right? And then there's about 12.5 that comes from renting. Rental property. There's those who own dwellings, obviously, and they're making money from rental income. And then you have about 10.4, which is pensions and social insurance. You then have a small percentage called other income. You know how we do this, we'll have to look into it at another time. We'd normally note it and say, wait a minute, what is other income? What source is this? We note it for another time. Nonetheless, we move. There's what they call also income from capital. Interesting terminology that they are using there, income from capital. And we just gonna get into what is income from capital. There's also a small percentage called income from individuals and etc. And say this is how the income earning is spread generally in South Africa. That's the bulk of it is coming from salaries and the rest other means of income. Cool. Happy. We now want to know, how is this thing spread across the provinces, across the genders, across the races? And that's where you see the inequality issue come through, whether it's factual or not. You see it for yourself in these slides. They try to compute this for us and actually show it us, the averages. Remember, South Africa's average was 204. Now you see that Western Cape, with a massive 356,000 annual household income. Very, very key for us to understand also when they say, household, it means, combined income, if both the wife and the husband are working, households, that's what it means. Now, the Western Cape is leading there, by a wide margin, even to Gauteng, which, many of us would assume, oh, Gauteng is the leader in all sorts of things, but there is a big margin. A shocking margin. Naturally, it should raise questions for us to say, what is the cause of this? What is behind this? But something to consider as we move. There's the gender issue that we need to look into. There's other income sources that we need to look into, and Western Cape. Least to mention the fact that other provinces being the likes of Limpopo, right at the bottom there with the lowest, quite concerning, and they have a note for you there. They say Limpopo was almost 3 times lower, the highest of Western Cape. So income earned in Limpopo is 3 times lower than the average income, household income, and from the Western Cape. So that's a provincial makeup of the story, and we move. I hope you are beginning to see the trend. We first looked at, income, household income in South Africa. The makeup of it, 69%, about 69%, it's salaries, and then there's rental income, there's pensions and grants and other things, but the bulk of it is salaried income. So we're going to move to the next slide, where this slide is very interesting. It looks at Cape Town now, and they try and compute what they call the average salary in the city of Cape Town, and the middle, the median there is the middle of it. And as you can see there, the city of Cape Town has 169 and the average is 387. And I'm going to move to the city of Joburg at 114,000 and the average is 280. Naturally, this is raising questions, right? How is Cape Town leading so much? Story for another day. Let's move. We are looking at the provincial breakdown. We now need to move to the racial breakdown and then move to the gender. So we move. What you're looking at right now is the gender breakdown. Most interesting slide, I must add. It says here, female-headed households earn significantly less than male counterparts. Now, in the earlier slide, we asked, why is it that the male counterparts were like 62% of the income earned, with females at less than 40%. In fact, that's what they said. Now, this slide answers you, right? It says here that female-headed households earn significantly less income than male counterparts. So there's no need for us to go any further and dig any further. Again, it comes down to gender pay inequality. That, the males in this country are earning far more than females. And you see the graph there. What have the BEE and the employment equity policies done? This presentation doesn't look into that, but those are the questions that come to mind immediately. And we will dig further. Looking forward to seeing questions and thoughts on how we should go further on this. Bongnomics. Ciao.